The courtroom smelled like old paper and expensive perfume. My stepmother sat 3 feet away from me, hands folded like she was praying, except she wasn't praying for me. She was praying the judge would believe her. "Your Honor," she said, voice soft and trembling on cue. "She doesn't even know what day it is. She can't manage money. She can barely manage herself." She didn't blink. And the worst part? Behind her, my own family nodded along like they were watching a public service announcement about a broken girl who needed to be saved. I looked at her wrist. My father's Cartier watch. The one he bought her 2 Christmases ago, back when he still thought love and loyalty were the same thing. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just folded my hands in my lap and counted silently. 14. That was how many days she had left before she lost everything she'd stolen from my father, and everything she'd stolen from me. Because here's what she didn't know. I wasn't trapped in her story. I was letting her finish it under oath. My name is Elena Calloway. I'm 29. I live in Houston, Texas. I've learned something about predators. The dangerous ones don't look like monsters. They look like caretakers. They look like people who cry in public and whisper in private. My stepmother's name is Marla Calloway, and she has the kind of smile that makes strangers relax. It's also the kind that makes you doubt your own memory. She came into my life when I was 12, 8 months after my mom died of pancreatic cancer. She arrived with blonde highlights, a warm casserole, and a voice that sounded like safety. My dad, Robert, was a good man drowning in grief. When you're drowning, you don't judge the rope. You grab it. Marla didn't just marry him. She rearranged him. Over the next 17 years, she became the gatekeeper of his world. She decided which friends were a bad influence. She decided which relatives were too stressful. She decided what kept him calm. If someone questioned her, she didn't fight. She sighed like the question itself was cruelty. My father slowly stopped making plans without her, stopped calling people back, stopped trusting his own instincts. And I grew up learning a brutal lesson. In some families, love isn't a feeling, it's a currency. My dad had money, not loud money, not celebrity money, but quiet wealth. The kind that buys properties, investments, and loyalty that looks like family. There was a house in River Oaks, a lake house in Conroe. And the real prize, the Calloway Family Trust, built by my grandfather in 1974 commercial properties, investment accounts, a structure meant to last. My father served as trustee. Marla served as atmosphere. She filled rooms, hosted dinners, sent holiday cards. Everyone liked her. That was her power. Then 14 months before the courtroom scene, my father had a stroke. He died in the ICU at Houston Methodist at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I held his hand until it went cold. Marla was in the waiting room. On her phone, calling his financial advisor. I remember thinking, that's strange. Later I'd understand. It wasn't strange. It was the point. In the week after the funeral, I learned 3 things that changed my entire life. First, my dad updated his will 18 months before he died. He left Marla the house, but he left the trust about $3.8 million to me. Entirely. No shared. No split. Second, Marla knew about the change for 4 months. She found a draft in his desk while he was at a cardiology appointment. She didn't confront him. She didn't argue. She didn't panic. She smiled through dinners like nothing happened. Because she didn't need to change the will. She only needed to make sure I could never enforce it. Third, Marla spent those same 4 months siphoning money out of the trust's operating account. Not huge amounts. Just enough to keep her lifestyle alive when she knew her future was about to end. 5,000 here, 8,000 there. Small enough to avoid automatic audits. By the time my father died, more than $260,000 had quietly disappeared into accounts I couldn't see. I found out because I did what my father always begged me to do. Be responsible. So I checked, and then I checked again. And the numbers didn't add up. Most people would react. Most people would explode. But my stepmother's entire life was built on one truth. Emotion makes people sloppy. And sloppy people are easy to discredit. So I didn't scream. I went to the family attorney. His name was Curtis Halpern. He'd been our lawyer forever. He'd been at holiday dinners. He shook my hand at graduation. He sent flowers at my mother's funeral. I walked into his office with statements and said, "Money is missing from the trust." He looked at me like I was sleep-deprived and dramatic. "Elena," he said gently, "you've been through a lot. These are normal expenses. fees, maintenance, operational costs. I slid the statements forward. He didn't read them. Not even performatively. "Let me handle it," he said. "You focus on healing." And that's when I knew, not that he didn't understand, that he understood exactly what he was doing. Because ignorance is messy. Collusion is calm. I walked out, got into my car, and sat there until my hands stopped shaking. Then I made a decision so clean it felt like ice. If they wanted a story where I was unstable, I'd give them one. Just not the way they expected. I became quiet. I became small. I became invisible. I moved out of the apartment my dad had been helping with and into a studio in Montrose, $800 a month. Cheap enough to look like I was struggling. Normal enough to look like I wasn't planning anything. I drove my 10-year-old Civic. I wore jeans, t-shirts, no makeup. I stopped mentioning the trust. I still showed up to family dinners. I smiled at Marla across the table while she patted my hand and said, "Your father would want us close, sweetheart." I let everyone think I was coping badly. I let them see what they wanted to see. And every single night after those dinners, I sat at my kitchen table with a laptop and black coffee, and I traced every dollar she touched. Because here's what Marla never bothered to learn about me. My job title is boring on paper, but for 6 years, I worked in forensic audits, fraud detection, money trails, corporate shells. I have helped build cases against people who thought they were untouchable. My entire career is following money through dark hallways until I find the room where it's hiding. Marla thought she was stealing from a grieving daughter. She was stealing from someone trained to document crimes. Still, evidence isn't enough in family war. You don't just need to be right. You need to be believed. And belief is about timing. So I watched. I documented transfers in real time. Timestamps, device fingerprints, IP logs. I pulled corporate filings from Wyoming and Delaware. And the pattern emerged. 3 shell companies. Always 3. Like a cheap scam blueprint. Hollow Creek LLC. Bright Horizon Consulting. Legacy Asset Management. Of course she called it legacy. The irony was disgusting. The money flowed from the trust to those companies, sat for 30 to 60 days, then flowed again cleaner, quieter. Then I found the crack. One transfer used a VPN, but the device signature still leaked enough to identify the network. It wasn't from Marla's home. It was from an office network. A law office network. Curtis Halpern's. My stomach didn't drop. It hardened. Because now I wasn't fighting one woman. I was fighting a coordinated setup. And coordinated setups fail when they get confident. 5 months into my silent investigation, Marla made her move. She filed a petition for emergency conservatorship. That's a legal way of saying, she wants the court to declare me mentally unfit and give her control over my life and the trust. It was phase 2. She wasn't just stealing money. She was stealing credibility. Because once I'm labeled unstable, any accusation I make sounds like paranoia. And then she made it worse. She brought a psychologist, Dr. Edwin Marsh, who wrote a report diagnosing me with cognitive decline without ever examining me. He wrote it based on what Marla said over the phone. Over the phone. He'd never met me. But his credentials looked impressive on paper, and paper is what people trust when they don't want to think too hard. So now we're back where this story started. Courtroom 4B. A Wednesday morning in January. Marla describing me like I'm a damaged appliance. Her lawyer asking the court to hand her control. My family in the gallery nodding like they're listening to a sermon. The judge looking at me and asking, "How do you respond?" And I did something that made everyone in that room relax. I said, "Your Honor, I'm willing to cooperate." I said I'd do any evaluation the court wanted. And then I said the sentence that made Marla believe she'd already won. I'm not opposed to my stepmother being appointed temporary conservator until things are clarified. The gallery exhaled. Marla's lips almost smiled. Curtis Halpern looked pleased, like the script was going exactly as written. What they didn't understand was simple. If Marla became conservator temporarily, she would gain authority. And authority creates paper trails. Paper trails create felonies. The judge nodded slowly, then asked Marla's attorney for documentation. Curtis stood and presented a folder, saying the trust had lost over $260,000. Marla chimed in. "She doesn't even check statements, Your Honor." And I waited. 5 seconds, long enough for her to enjoy her performance. Then I stood. "Your Honor, may I approach?" I walked forward with my binder. Thick, tabbed, color-coded. Red, financial records. Blue, digital forensics. Green, Corporate filings. Yellow. Perjury. I placed it on the bench. I didn't lose track of $260,000, I said calmly. I watched every dollar leave. I know where it went, when it went, and who sent it. Marla's hands tightened around the table. I opened the red tab. 41 transfers from the trust's operating account to 3 LLCs, Hollow Creek, Bright Horizon, and Legacy Asset. Her attorney started to object. I ignored him. I flipped to green. Those LLCs are incorporated in Wyoming using registered agents. Public filings list nominee officers, but the beneficial owner is recorded in confidential filings. I looked directly at Marla. The beneficial owner is Marla Denise Calloway. The courtroom erupted. Aunt Colette gasped. Someone whispered, "No." Marla snapped, mask slipping. "She's delusional. This is what I've been saying, she's paranoid." The judge raised a hand. Silence. He looked at Marla with something like disgust. Then he turned to me. "Continue." I opened the blue tab. "These are the IP logs. Every transfer originated from the same device on the home network at 1847 Willow Creek Lane." I said her address out loud. Truth hits harder when it has an address. Curtis tried again. "Your Honor, this evidence hasn't been properly." I flipped to bank statements. Here's the pattern. Money enters the shell companies, sits 30-60 days, then transfers to a personal brokerage account at Charles Schwab. I looked at Marla. That account is held jointly by Marla Calloway and Trevor Fisk. Her mouth opened, closed. I continued anyway. Trevor Fisk is a real estate agent in Galveston. He and my stepmother have been in a relationship for about 3 years. While my father was alive, I have hotel receipts, text logs, and a lease agreement for a beachfront condo co-signed by both of them. And that condo was financed by money taken from the trust. The gallery went silent, not the earlier silence of judgment, but the new silence of recalculation. The judge closed the binder slowly, rubbed his eyes, and looked at Marla. "Mrs. Calloway," he said, voice controlled, "did you file this petition knowing you were the one making those transfers?" Curtis grabbed her arm. "Don't answer." But Marla was spiraling. "It's not what it looks like," she blurted. "Robert told me to manage funds, he gave me authority." "He didn't," I said softly. "And I can prove it." Then I opened the yellow tab. "The petitioner submitted a letter to this court," I said, "supposedly written by my father granting Marla broad authority over the trust, dated 3 months before his death, signed by him." Curtis went pale. "I had it examined by a certified forensic document examiner," I continued. "The signature is a digital copy, lifted from a 2023 property tax document and pasted using image editing software." I paused, then delivered the part that made the room freeze. "The metadata shows the PDF was created 4 days after my father died, on a computer registered to Curtis Halpern's law office." Curtis slammed his hand down. "This is outrageous!" "The letter is a forgery," I said, "submitted under oath." The judge stared at Curtis. "Mr. Halpern," he asked quietly, "did you prepare that document?" Curtis didn't answer. He didn't need to. Marla snapped at him instantly. "You said no one would check." That was it. The confession nobody could unhear. The judge raised his hand again. His voice when he spoke was final. "The petition for conservatorship is denied with prejudice. This matter is referred to the Harris County District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation." He looked at Marla. "Mrs. Calloway, I strongly suggest you retain separate criminal counsel. Mr. Halpern cannot represent you. He appears to be a subject of the same investigation." Then he turned to me. "Miss Calloway, these transfers cross jurisdictions. I'm also referring this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office for review." Marla's face went blank like someone unplugged her. And I sat down, hands steady, feeling something strange. Not joy. Relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally exhaled. If you want the aftermath and the second twist, subscribe. It gets darker. In the hallway after, Aunt Colette approached me with tears. "I didn't know," she whispered. "She told us you were unstable." "I know what she said," I replied. I wasn't angry at Colette. Not yet. Because manipulation doesn't just trap victims. It traps witnesses. Marla had been working them for months, lunches, calls, concerned messages. She turned my family into an audience. But I still believed Colette was fooled. I still believed the enemy was Marla. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, the DA's office called. "Miss Calloway," the investigator said, "we have a question." "Okay." Do you know who the ultimate beneficiary was? Marla, I answered. A pause. Not exactly. My stomach tightened. They followed the money beyond the shell companies and the brokerage, past the condo, and it led to a fourth destination, an account labeled as a family foundation. Clean branding, charitable language. The authorized signer was Aunt Colette, my father's sister, the woman who cried in the hallway. My hands started shaking for the first time in months. Because betrayal from an enemy hurts. Betrayal from someone you trusted rewrites your reality. The investigator continued. They had emails, messages about strategy, about timing, about keeping the family aligned, about the conservatorship petition being the final step. So I drove to Colette's house that same day. I didn't call. I didn't ask permission. I knocked. She opened the door like she expected me. She wore a cardigan and pearl earrings, looking like the kind of woman who runs bake sales and prays for sick neighbors. Elena, she said softly. Come in. I stayed on the porch. I know, I said. Her eyes flickered, annoyance, not guilt. She stepped back anyway. We sat at her dining table. Her house smelled like lemon cleaner and control. Everything was arranged for reputation. I asked the question that hurt to ask. Why? Colette folded her hands and said, calm as a teacher. Because you don't belong. My throat tightened. She explained it like a moral equation. My mother was not a Calloway. The trust was meant for the line, for the legacy, for the name. My father, in her eyes, made an emotional decision leaving it to me alone, and she believed it was her duty to correct it. I stared at her. You used Marla, I said. Colette corrected me gently. I managed Marla. Marla is greedy. Greed is loud. It draws attention. But greed is useful if you steer it. She admitted it without admitting it, like she thought she was explaining a business plan. That conservatorship, she said, was the cleanest solution. If the court declares you unstable, a conservator controls the trust. The trust stays in the family. You were going to erase me, I whispered. Colette's face softened, like she wanted credit for mercy. You would have been taken care of. Taken care of. Like a dependent. Like a problem. That was twist number 2. Marla wasn't the mastermind. Marla was the mask. Colette was the architect. I stood up. Colette didn't flinch. You can't prove it, she said. I leaned forward and placed my phone on the table. I don't need to, I said. Her brow lifted. I already sent everything to the DA this morning. That was the first time I saw her lose control. Not screaming. Just a crack in the composure. Because people like Colette don't fear consequences. They fear exposure. I looked her in the eye. You'll try to tell people I'm vindictive, I said. You'll say grief made me cruel. Go ahead. Every email is time-stamped. Every transfer is recorded. And unlike Marla, you can't cry your way out of metadata. Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't need a dramatic ending. The evidence would do it for me. 6 months later, the world looked different. Marla was indicted. Estate theft, forgery, aggravated perjury, money laundering, federal wire fraud. Curtis Halpern was indicted. Conspiracy, tampering with government record, and fraud-related charges. The condo was seized. Brokerage frozen. The money in shell companies was clawed back into the trust. Colette wasn't spared either. Because prosecutors don't care how nice you seem at family dinners. They care what you signed and where the money went. Marla took a plea deal. Curtis took a plea deal. Colette tried to rewrite the story calls, tears. I was misled. But she couldn't rewrite a paper trail. She lost. Quietly. Completely. I didn't attend sentencing. Closure isn't something I outsourced to a courtroom. I already had mine the day I stood up and opened that binder. Instead, I went to my mother's grave. Small cemetery. Live oak tree. Acorns in the grass. I sat down and told her everything. And then I told her the part that embarrassed me to admit. For months, I was terrified. Not brave. Terrified. I woke up at 3 a.m., with my heart racing, wondering if I'd miscalculated, wondering if they'd find out, wondering if anyone would believe me. But I did it anyway. Not because I'm fearless, because I decided fear wasn't a good enough reason to let someone steal what my parents built. People think strength is the absence of fear. It isn't. Strength is sitting at a dinner table with someone lying to your face and eating your meal anyway, because patience is a weapon they never see coming. Marla was loud. I was quiet. Marla played to the crowd. I played to the evidence. And when the curtain fell, The audience realized they'd been watching the wrong character the whole time. Comment Binder if you've ever had to prove the truth the hard way. I read every comment. Afterward, I sold the lake house. I used part of the proceeds to create a scholarship in my mother's name at her alma mater. I restructured the trust. I fired the advisor who'd been too friendly with Marla and hired a fiduciary who answered only to me. I moved into a real apartment again. I adopted a three-legged rescue dog and named him Verdict, because my therapist said humor is allowed. And sometimes, late at night, I think about how close I came to losing everything, not just money, but my name, my sanity, my reputation. That's what predators take first, not your savings, your credibility. Because once nobody believes you, you're not a person anymore. You're a story they get to tell. So if you're listening and you recognize that feeling being painted as unstable so someone else can control what's yours, listen to me. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. And you're not alone. Document everything. Tell no one. Wait. And when the time comes, walk into that room with your binder and your steady hands. Show them exactly who they underestimated. Peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you build, one page at a time, in a folder they never see coming.